Sentenced to 10 years in prison, charged with treason and chased out of Liberia many times, Ellen Johnson Sirleaf rose up beyond reasonable doubt to save Liberia from an unending civil war, human rights abuse and political instability. This is the Ellen Johnson story, the Iron Lady of Africa. You're watching African Dream Motivation. Let's get into it. Ellen Johnson was born on 29 October 1938. She was a Liberian politician who served as the 24th President of Liberia from 2006 to 2018 and also the first female head of state in Africa. Her parents lived in a poor rural area in Monrovia where she was brought up. Her father, Jamel Kane Johnson, was born into a Gola family in a poor rural region and was the first Liberian from an indigenous ethnic group to be elected to the country's national legislature. Sirleaf's mother was also born into poverty in Greenville. They were not overly rich, but they made sure their daughter got the best education they could afford. In the early 1930s, education was gradually gaining ground in Monrovia. Ellen Johnson attended the College of West Africa Preparatory School. She enrolled in school in 1948 and completed in 1955. At the age of 17, she got married to James Sirleaf. James worked at the Department of Agriculture, while Ellen Johnson was a bookkeeper in an auto repair shop and was primarily occupied as a homemaker. The couple gave birth to 4 sons and had a beautiful family during the initial stages of their marriage. In 1961, Ellen Johnson traveled with her husband to the United States, where she continued her education and earned an associate degree in accounting at the Madison Business College in Madison, Wisconsin. They returned to Liberia, where her husband continued working with the Agri Department and Sirleaf explored new career opportunities in the Ministry of Finance. Their marriage took a swift turn after James became very abusive and she couldn't take it anymore. They divorced in 1961. Ellen Johnson returned to college to finish her bachelor's degree. Her quest to achieve academic excellence led her to earn a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from the Economic Institute of the University of Colorado, Boulder. She also earned a master's degree in public administration after studying economics and public policy at Harvard Kennedy School from 1969 to 1971. When she returned to Liberia, her knowledge was dearly needed by the government led by William Tobit. She was appointed as Assistant Minister of Finance, where she gained popularity due to how confident she was in addressing controversial issues in the country. Notable among them was her speech at the Liberian Chamber of Commerce, which claimed that the country's corporations were harming the economy by hoarding and sending profits overseas. After serving as an assistant minister from 1972 to 1973, she resigned because she didn't approve of the government spending. She came into the scene again in 1979 after she was appointed as Minister of Finance. Her service came to an end in April 1980 as a result of a bloody coup d'etat masterminded and led by Sergeant Samuel Doe. After Sergeant Doe seized power, he ordered the assassination of William Tobit and the execution by firing squad of all but 4 members of his cabinet. The People's Redemption Council launched a hunt for members of the previous government, but Sirleaf was exempted. She accepted a position in the new administration of Sergeant Doe as the president of the Liberian Bank for Development and Investment. However, this was short-lived after Sirleaf publicly criticized Doe and the People's Redemption Council for their poor management of the country. She fled the country because her life was in danger. She moved to Washington, D.C., where she worked for the World Bank, and in 1981, she returned to Africa, but this time, she went to Nairobi, Kenya, to serve as the Vice President of the African Regional Office of Citibank. Her performance on the international front was remarkable, and in 1992, She was appointed as the director of the United Nations Development Programme's Regional Bureau for Africa at the rank of Assistant Administrator and Assistant Secretary General. In 1997, she resigned to run for the presidency in Liberia. It was time for her to pick up a new challenge in her dear country. She returned to Liberia in 1985 to run for vice president under Jackson Doe for the Liberian Action Party. Immediately after Sirleaf got to Liberia, she was placed under house arrest and later sentenced to 10 years in prison. She was charged with sedition as a consequence of a speech she gave and spoke against the governance of Sergeant Samuel Doe. Sirleaf's contribution to the World Bank and other international bodies brought a lot of pressure on Samuel Doe for imprisoning her. International superpowers began calling for her release, and in September 1985, she was released, but unfortunately, she had been removed from the presidential tickets, making her run for the Senate seat in Montserrado County instead. The 1985 election result went in favor of Samuel Doe and the National Democratic Party. However, the election was widely condemned as neither free nor fair. Even though Sirleaf was declared a winner in her Senate race, she refused to accept the seat in protest of the fraudulent election held. On 12 November 1985, Thomas Kwiwompa, a great ally of Samuel Doe, after assisting him in the coup against William Tolbert, attempted a coup against Samuel Doe himself. But unfortunately for Thomas, the timing was wrong, and even though he had a few support from other military men, he couldn't succeed with the coup. Thomas was captured and killed right away. Ellen Johnson was also arrested and imprisoned again on 13th November 1985. She still refused to accept the Senate seat, maintaining her claim of a fraudulent election held. She was again released in July 1986. She again fled the country to the United States later in the year in fear of her life. At the beginning of the First Liberian Civil War in 1989, Sirleaf supported Charles Taylor in his rebellion against Samuel Doe. She even went to the extent of helping raise money for the war and funded the National Patriotic Front of Liberia, with Charles Taylor leading the party towards a great rebellion. When President Samuel Doe realized Sirleaf's involvement in Charles Taylor's rebellion, he recommended that Sirleaf should be banned from politics in Liberia for 30 years. Even though Sirleaf didn't succumb to Sergeant Doe's leadership, she later opposed Charles Taylor's handling of the war and his inhuman treatment of rivals such as Jackson Doe, who was killed during the First Liberian Civil War. It was reported many times that Charles Taylor's NPFL soldiers had a hand in his death. In the year 1997, Liberia held a general election in which Sirleaf returned to contest for the presidency. She led her newly formed party, Unity Party, into the elections and got 25% of the vote to Charles Taylor's 75%. The result appeared to be massaged, and Sirleaf couldn't keep quiet about it. She was accused of treason and she had to run for her life again. She was in exile in Abidjan, Ivory Coast. After the Second Liberian Civil War, a transitional government was established, and Sirleaf was proposed as a possible candidate to chair the government. Upon her return, she served as the head of the Government Reform Commission. In the 2005 general election, she contested seriously, leading her Unity Party to victory against football legend George Weah. She placed second in the first round of voting behind George Weah, but subsequently took the lead by 59% of the votes against George Weah's 40%. She promised to serve for only one term and then hand over peacefully, but in January 2010, she announced her decision to contest again. She was widely criticized, especially by the opposition party, claiming that she would have broken a promise if she indeed contested again. She contested and won the election once more. After a hard and courageous work done, her tenure of office came to an end. In 2017, she crossed party lines and supported George Weah in the 2017 presidential campaign. She ended up being expelled from her own party, Unity Party, for failing to support their own presidential candidate, Joseph Boakai. George Weah went ahead to win the election, becoming the first footballer to be president. Forbes magazine named Sirleaf as the 51st most powerful woman in the world in 2006. In 2018, Newsweek listed her as one of the 10 best leaders in the world. In 2018 again, she founded the Johnson Sirleaf Presidential Center for Women and Development. The sole aim of this organization was to be a catalyst for change across Africa by helping to empower women to step outside their comfort zone to make impact across the world. In 2019, she was appointed as the World Health Organization Goodwill Ambassador for the health workers. She is also a member of the board of directors for MasterCard Foundation. Again, she is a member of the advisory board for Brand Trust Foundation and many others. In 2010, Sirleaf released her first book, The Child Will Be Great, Memoir of a Remarkable Life by Africa's First Woman President. Due to her hard work and perseverance, she has received numerous awards from countries and organizations. Among these outstanding medals and awards are the Presidential Medal of Freedom by the U.S. President George Walker Bush, the 2008 Golden Plate Award of the American Academy of Achievement. In 2011, she received the Nobel Peace Prize, which summarizes her hard work in a grand style. Johnson Sirleaf is one of the bravest women in politics and has demonstrated true leadership in the toughest of times in African politics. She is indeed the Iron Lady of Africa. Thank you for making it to the end of this video. This has been Bernard and you've been watching African Dream Motivation. Kindly subscribe for more.